All right, Seahawks fans, we need to talk because something just happened around the league that could end up creating a much bigger headache for Seattle than most people realize. At first glance, it doesn't even seem like it's about the Seahawks. But once you connect the dots, you start to see why this could have a real impact on the team's future. Trust me, this is one of those stories that's way more important than the headline suggests. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button if you bleed blue and green. And let me know down in the comments. Go Hawks! I want to see that comment section filled with real Seahawks fans. Jalen Carter's brand new contract has suddenly created a situation that could become one of the biggest financial challenges for the Seattle Seahawks. And the impact is not something that should be viewed as a problem for years down the road alone. According to the information in the report, this is something that already changes the conversation around Seattle's defensive line today. Carter and the Philadelphia Eagles agreed to a 4-year extension worth $152 million, with the potential value reaching $160 million, while $106 million is fully guaranteed. That deal now makes him the highest-paid interior defensive lineman in the NFL, completely resetting the market and raising the expectations for players who believe they belong in the same conversation. The reason this immediately matters to Seattle is because two names stand out in this discussion: Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy. The report argues that Carter's extension has effectively established a new benchmark. And whenever a player at one position dramatically raises the salary ceiling, others naturally begin measuring their own value against that new standard. Instead of looking at older contracts, agents now have a fresh example that strengthens future negotiations, and that places Seattle in an interesting position moving forward. Leonard Williams enters the final year of his current contract, making his timing especially important. While there is an acknowledgement that he may not receive a contract with the same length as Carter because of the difference in age, the report emphasizes that his annual value could still climb significantly. Rather than focusing on total years, the discussion centers on average annual salary and where Williams could fit among the league's highest-paid interior defenders if negotiations eventually begin. Then there is Byron Murphy, whose situation follows a different timeline but may ultimately become even more expensive for Seattle. Since he remains on his rookie contract, he is not currently among the highest-paid players at his position. However, the report points out that he will become extension-eligible next offseason, creating the possibility that his representatives will use the newly established market as a foundation for future discussions. Once one elite contract pushes salaries upward, the ripple effects often continue across multiple negotiations, and that is exactly why this new agreement receives so much attention from a Seahawks perspective. One of the strongest opinions presented in the report involves comparing production between Jalen Carter, Leonard Williams, and Byron Murphy. The argument made is that Williams and Murphy produced superior statistical seasons. The comparison highlights that the Seattle duo nearly doubled Carter's tackle production, doubled his sack total, and outperformed him in tackles for loss. Based on those numbers, the conclusion presented is straightforward. If Seattle's defensive linemen have been more productive, they have every reason to believe they deserve contracts that reflect that level of performance. The report even goes further by describing Leonard Williams as the best interior defensive lineman and calling Byron Murphy's omission from a top 10 ranking a major mistake. Whether contract negotiations happen immediately or later, the central idea remains the same. Professional athletes constantly compare themselves with players receiving new deals across the league. When someone establishes a new financial standard, others naturally evaluate whether their own production supports asking for similar or greater compensation. That is presented as a normal part of business rather than something unusual or controversial. For Leonard Williams, Experience and consistent production strengthen his case despite the expectation of a shorter contract. The report stresses that while age may reduce the number of seasons included in any future agreement, it should not necessarily reduce his annual earning power. Seattle, therefore, could eventually face a decision balancing immediate financial flexibility against rewarding one of its most productive defensive players if discussions develop after this season. Byron Murphy's outlook appears even more intriguing because the report repeatedly emphasizes his continued development. Rather than describing a player who has already peaked, it portrays someone improving year after year. On top of that, observations coming from Seahawks training camp are described as overwhelmingly positive, with Murphy reportedly performing at an extremely high level. Those evaluations only strengthen the belief presented that his market value is heading in one direction, and that direction is upward. The report does not stop at saying Murphy will eventually receive a significant extension. It projects that he could ultimately become the highest-paid player at his position, arguing that he will earn every dollar if his development continues along its current path. From Seattle's perspective, that creates a difficult financial equation. Paying elite talent is something every organization wants to do, but every massive contract also affects future roster construction, salary allocation, and long-term planning. Carter's extension, therefore, becomes much more than an Eagles story. It instantly becomes relevant to the Seahawks because of how it may influence future negotiations with two important defensive linemen already on Seattle's roster. The report then shifts toward another important topic involving the Seahawks' backfield, focusing on Zach Charbonnet and his recovery process after suffering an ACL injury. It explains that while some observers previously viewed him as the secondary option behind Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet established an important role within Seattle's offense. He proved capable of running between the tackles, embraced a physical style, and became someone the organization reportedly valued because of his overall contributions. According to the report, Charbonnet's performance in that complementary role last season helped solidify his importance to the offense. He averaged 4 yards per carry on fewer than 200 rushing attempts and was especially effective later in the season. His ability to produce in short yardage and red zone situations is specifically highlighted, portraying him as a powerful runner capable of delivering difficult yards when the offense needed them most. Those qualities helped him become a player many fans could appreciate, while also making him an important piece of Seattle's offensive plans. Unfortunately, the report explains that the ACL injury dramatically changed the immediate outlook. With Charbonnet unavailable during recovery, additional attention has shifted toward other running backs as Seattle evaluates the position. The report also notes that Kenny McIntosh was waived, adding another layer of change to the running back room while emphasizing that Charbonnet's absence has forced adjustments throughout the group. Even with those changes, the report maintains that Charbonnet remains an important part of Seattle's future plans once healthy. It describes his determination throughout rehabilitation and notes that he has worked aggressively to return as quickly as possible. Earlier expectations pointed toward a return sometime during the middle to latter part of October, but new information introduced later in the discussion suggests there could be another possibility beginning to emerge. Based only on everything presented in this report, which storyline do you think deserves more attention right now? The long-term contract implications created by Jalen Carter's record-setting extension, or the uncertainty surrounding Zach Charbonnet's recovery timeline and eventual return to the Seahawks? Let me know your opinion in the comments.